Today I wanted to talk about a subject that's been on my mind for some time now, and that is to do with a lot of bushcraft videos I've seen demonstrating like axe technique and safe. Now some of them are fairly decent as far as the safety is concerned. The main thing I keep seeing coming up is just a complete lack of understanding of chip removal. It's a very fundamental principle with using an axe. I'll put some videos in the description with links to old training videos from the Forest Service and the Boy Scouts of America showing very fundamental technique, and they include cutting patterns, and it's something you very rarely see come up in bushcraft videos. I'll probably put a clickbaity title on this video, but the point of it is not to denigrate anybody. Over 10 years ago, when I was a lot younger, and the thing that got me into axes was watching sort of bushcraft videos, and that's what piqued my interest, is many of the chopping. Eventually I had the opportunity to do some like wood chopping in a forest, which I then took part in the cordwood challenge, which is to cut as many ricks of wood as possible. So it really gets you into being efficient, and then also went on to compete in steel timber sports. So I've had quite a lot of experience now. There's still always a lot to learn and a lot to perfect, but I feel like I can speak on the subject with some authority. A lot of the bushcraft videos I watch have what I would call beavering in it. This is a style of chopping without any sort of chopping pattern. Chip away at the log randomly, one hit left, one hit right, one hit left, one hit right, not at the same heights and severing all the fibres on one side before turning, but basically just knocking out little chips until you get through the log. You also tend to see that the axe comes in at a far too steeper angle, so it's not 90 degrees but it's not far off, and it doesn't get much bite that way. You also see that sometimes the notch starts way too small, and rather than expand it, you just try and like hammer away at the middle of the log till it gives up. This just leads to really poor, inefficient chopping, a lot of wasted energy, and also you're not really learning anything. You're just sort of swinging the axe hoping to get through the log. The axe is hitting random points, it's taking out small chips, but there's no real rhyme or reason to the placement. When you're a beginner, I think you should take your time, slow down, focus on being as efficient as possible, making each blow count. Speed and power will come with time. There's another thing that doesn't help with this, and that's switching hands. I've seen some videos advertising the benefits of switching hands when chopping. Personally, I think it's the worst thing you could do as a beginner. It doesn't allow you to build up accuracy with one arm before switching to the other. I can do it with my offhand, but even then it's not easy at all to get accuracy. The power's not there. When the axe gets stuck, it's harder to get out, and overall I think you're far better off following other techniques that I've shown. The cutting pattern and overlapping racks becomes far more important as well when you get to larger logs. When you're chopping bigger logs, if you're not pulling out big chips, you're going to be there for an eternity. Using the switching hand technique, I find you have very little like power and control, because you're relying more on your wrists rather than getting your shoulders and your body in line with the cut. You can do it with light axes, but when you get up to heavier axes, I think switching hands is setting yourself up for failure. It can be a useful technique to learn for felling in awkward spots, but I don't think there's any use for bucking and switching hands. So this is the kind of thing you'll see from an axeman who doesn't really know what they're doing, and that's small chips. You should be pulling out large chips to be efficient. So the way to solve this problem is following a cutting pattern. In this short clip I'll show you what a cutting pattern is. Ignore the fact I'm standing on top of the log, that's an advanced technique, but everything else still applies. When you're chopping a log, work to a cutting pattern. Don't just randomly place hits to the left and then to the right and then to the left and to the right. What you want to do is sever all the fibres on one side and then sever all the fibres on the other side, and then that will produce a very large chip, and that's the most efficient way of cutting it. So your cutting pattern, you start at the bottom, overlap your axe, work to the top. You want to overlap the axe blows at least about an inch, and also have your axe edge stick out the bottom of the log just a tiny bit if possible. Obviously if you're right on the ground you don't want to do that. But if you've got a bit of space underneath the log, stick the toe of the axe out just slightly, and then as you work to the top, the heel of the axe should stick out the top of the log when you're finished. The cutting pattern is always start at the bottom and work your way up until you reach the top of the log. Most logs with a 5-inch axe bit, you should cut in 2 or 3 blows. Then you turn and you start at the top and work your way down. You can see here my feet are pointing towards the axe blade. And I'm going to start my cut off with a low hit. Then after that, the second cut's just above it, overlapping. Now I turn, you can see my feet have moved again. They're kind of spread apart and pointing towards the axe blade. Now with this cut, I start at the top and then go down. And I just repeat. That action until the chip comes out. Bottom, top, top, bottom. This is how it will look when you're actually out in the woods processing a whole tree. One of the best bushcrafters I know of is Morse Kahansky, and he has a fantastic book, and the chopping he shows is very similar to this, and he also talks about processing a whole tree in 10 minutes. Now that sounds a bit absurd to some people, but I've done it in the past and it is perfectly possible, but you're never going to achieve that without having cutting patterns and being efficient with every blow. It also works in deadwood. You know, some of the harder woods you get less bite, but still a cutting pattern helps you pull out the chip. The fact the axe is overlapping means it doesn't get stuck as much because there's always a free corner in the wood. Okay, I think that's side done. Trying to do that. Probably not too many blows. I'd recommend watching my full video on axe safety. I'll put the link in the description, but you can see from the back here my feet position. So when the log snaps and the axe comes through, my feet aren't in danger. Go. The same principle for bucking applies to felling as well. If you open up a small notch using overlapping cuts and then widen the notch hitting the top, overlapping the axe till the chip pops out. If you make a mistake and don't cut your line, go back and fix it. Otherwise your notch will close up too early. You have to cut efficiently, and that means cutting on the line. Nothing wrong with that. Something else I'll say is the typical bushcraft axe is a Swedish style turpentine pattern with a very small edge length. These make it quite difficult to chop. Your overlapping has to be spot on, and even with this relatively small log, it takes 5 overlapping cuts per side. Hopefully that gives you a good idea of what I mean by cutting patterns and chip removal. It helps the axe stay free and also gets the chips out in the most efficient and fast way possible. If you can master a cutting pattern and cutting to the line, that's 90% of what efficient axe use is. Now I'm just going to show a bit of how I recommend to swing an axe. Just to give you a rough idea, I'd recommend watching my full video on it, but I find it's a much better way of swinging an axe for a beginner. I've taught several people how to do this. I've had loads of comments on my channel from people who have tried this and had great success, like almost instant improvement in accuracy, and when I learnt it from the competition axeman, it was night and day difference. So, how to swing the axe again, bringing it straight up in front of your nose and straight down. turning your feet always to face the axe, and to make the 45-degree cut, I'm not standing still and doing this like a lot of people do. You know, you don't get much power or accuracy. Much better to turn your entire body and make the cut that way. Also notice how I'm bringing the axe up in front of my nose and straight down. I'm not swinging over the shoulder like this or this. I'm moving my entire body and cutting straight down. So it's kind of like shooting. You don't shoot by moving your arms, you shoot by moving your entire body. Keeps your accuracy. If you don't like moving your feet every time and you're cutting small wood, what I like to do sometimes is stand facing my weak side, and that way you're swinging over your strong shoulder without moving your feet with a more instinctive swing. It means you don't have to move so much, and when you're hitting smaller logs where you don't need to overlap so many cuts, it can be efficient to do that. But it also saves you from having to swap hands or do anything else. So thank you for watching. I hope it's been informative and helpful. Please comment if you've got any more questions, and please check out my links to other videos. Especially the old videos are very useful.